Before her death, archaeologist Eilat Mazar spoke of something buried deep within the Ophel of Jerusalem, a secret she believed could rewrite the history of a nation. Towering walls rising from the dust, royal seals pressed by ancient hands, and even imports from lands far beyond Israel. To Mazar, these were not just ruins. They were evidence of what some dared to call the palace of King David. For certain scholars, her findings represented the most significant archaeological evidence ever unearthed in Israel. For others, they were nothing more than a dangerous myth, the biased reading of stones and fragments. Yet what Mazar revealed before passing away may be the closest we've ever come to uncovering the truth about the biblical king. To understand why her discovery sparked such intense debate, we must step back in time, revisit Jerusalem's complex past, and meet the woman who had the courage to dig where others refused. The woman behind the trowel. Born into a long lineage of archaeologists, Eilat Mazar seemed destined to follow the same path. She inherited not only the technical knowledge, but also the boldness to face controversy head-on. Her excavations were never just academic projects. They were investigations that touched on faith, identity, and the very memory of a people. A legacy of stone and blood. Benjamin Mazar was not just an archaeologist. He was a giant, a pioneer who helped shape modern Israeli archaeology and gave it an identity of its own. His granddaughter, Eilat, grew up in his shadow, hearing not fairy tales, but stories of buried walls, royal seals, and forgotten cities returning to life under the strike of a spade. For her, archaeology was never just science. It was destiny. From a young age, Eilat believed that the Bible was not myth but memory. Where others saw poetry, she saw clues. That conviction set her apart. In academic circles, the scriptures were often dismissed as inspiration at best, myth at worst. But for her, they were maps pointing the way toward lost worlds. A mission for a lifetime. Her obsession became clear early on, to prove the existence of King David not as a literary character, but as a monarch ruling over a real kingdom. It wasn't enough to prove Jerusalem's existence. She wanted the palace, the seat of power itself. This quest would become the driving force of her life, the missing piece of history's puzzle. She was certain the key lay in the city of David, the hill south of today's Old City, where myth and stone overlap. According to scripture, David infiltrated the Jebusite fortress through a water shaft, seized the city, and turned a fortified village into the capital of a new kingdom. Echoes of a past. Explorers and archaeologists had tried before. In the 19th century, Charles Warren carved tunnels deep into the hill. Later, Kathleen Kenyon, a renowned British archaeologist, concluded that Jerusalem in David's time was nothing more than a small Iron Age village, far from the grandeur described in Scripture. Even her own grandfather, Benjamin, worked near the Temple Mount, but never sought the place Eilat would one day pursue. Decades of attempts had failed. To many, David's palace was either legend or a ruin long erased by time. To Eilat, the answer was simpler. No one had dug in the right place. The forgotten clue. Her perspective changed when she focused on a detail almost everyone else ignored. A verse in 2 Samuel 5 verse 11. Hiram, king of Tyre, sent messengers to David, along with cedar wood, carpenters, and stonemasons, and they built a house for David. To most, just another line of scripture. To her, the ultimate clue. If Hiram had sent master craftsmen and imported materials, the structure had to be monumental. Where would such a palace stand? On the highest, most defensible point, the Ophel, the ridge linking the city of David to the Temple Mount. There stood a puzzling structure, massive step stone terraces known as the Millo. To many, they were nothing more than support walls. To her, they were the foundation of a royal fortress. The dig. In 2005, she finally obtained permission to dig. Under Jerusalem's burning summer sun, every bucket of dirt removed carried centuries of dust and anticipation. Slowly, thick walls emerged, stones larger than any simple home required, pottery fragments dated to the 10th century BCE, the very age of David and Solomon. Eilat knew she was standing on the Iron Age layers, the right time period. But archaeology demanded more. She needed human evidence, names, lives, and stories to anchor her discovery. Seals of a kingdom. And then it happened. From the soil emerged a tiny clay bulla. At first glance, just another fragment. But when cleaned, letters appeared. Belonging to Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, king of Judah. A royal seal. Soon after, another surfaced, Gedaliah, son of Pashur, a figure mentioned in the book of Jeremiah. To find both names side by side at the same site was nearly impossible to dismiss. Suddenly, the Bible's characters had signatures pressed in clay, material proof of their existence. For Eilat, it was overwhelming. These were not just stones, they were people, alive once, governing, conspiring, living their stories right there. The great debate. But the academic world was not convinced. For some, her finds were groundbreaking proof. For others, too neat, too convenient. Critics argued that the stratigraphy might place the construction later, 9th or even 8th century BCE, long after David. They suggested the structure might not be a palace at all, but a fortress, a temple, or even a large warehouse. As for the bully, skeptics insisted they came from layers centuries later, tied to prophets, not kings. To them, names proved nothing. But Eilat stood her ground. The pottery, the soil layers, the monumental scale, the strategic location, all combined into a single picture. This was David's palace. The revelation of the Millo. Her vision extended further. She argued that the stepped stone structure was the biblical Millo itself, fortified by David. Not just a retaining wall, but the foundation of Zion's fortress. The palace above and the terraces below were one integrated system, a fortress palace meant to dominate the skyline and project royal authority. This interpretation reshaped the narrative. It wasn't just a royal residence. It was a symbol of conquest and power. A second great discovery. In 2010, her team made another breakthrough. Excavating in the Ophel, they uncovered a massive city wall alongside the ruins of a royal gatehouse. The stones were colossal, the pottery again pointing to the 10th century BCE. If Jerusalem had been a mere village, why would anyone build such monumental walls? These fortifications suggested not a hamlet, but a capital, with centralized authority and resources to defend a kingdom. The Warrens' shaft mystery. Yet one question remained. How had David captured the city? Scripture claimed Joab entered through a water shaft. The tunnel discovered by Charles Warren in the 19th century seemed too narrow, too impractical. Many dismissed the story as myth. But Eilat refused to abandon the possibility. For her, the ancient water system still held secrets, perhaps the very confirmation of David's first bold strike. The moment a warrior king carved a new destiny for his people. Call to action. And if this journey has surprised you so far, imagine what still lies hidden beneath Jerusalem stones. Leave your like so more people can uncover this mystery with you. And let's keep walking together until the very end of this story. Because if David's palace was real, what else from the Bible still waits to be unearthed? In her final work, Eilat Mazar went far beyond unearthing walls and stones. She returned to the very heart of the debate, the Gin Spring and Warren's shaft. To Mazar, traditional interpretations were far too simplistic. Her last publication, released posthumously, argued that the so-called Fortress of Zion was not just a wall, but the entire fortified area surrounding the Gin Spring, Jerusalem's only water source at the time. Protecting that spring, she claimed, would have been the most vital task of any king. And in her view, David was clever enough to secure control of the entire fortified water system. Mazar's career was never just about finding a palace. It was about reshaping the narrative of an entire scholarly field. With determination, she revived biblical archaeology, forcing even her fiercest critics to re-examine their assumptions. Today, while consensus remains elusive, her discoveries are now central to any serious debate about ancient Jerusalem. But the question still lingers. Is the large stone structure truly the palace of King David? Pottery, bully, and massive stonework suggest yes. Yet without an inscription reading, "This is the palace of King David," certainty may forever elude us. And now I ask you, what do these ancient traces reveal about King David and the scope of his kingdom? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story intrigued you, don't leave just yet. Click the next video and uncover another fascinating mystery that biblical archaeology still holds.